be good if I actually turn the mic on. This is a quick recap of some of the trades that I spoke about in my previous videos, some of the things I was holding from last week. I eventually did subsequently got out of GPS. It's been struggling to break out of the 18s. I have been long. Initially, I was long 550 shares at 1612, and I had been watching for a breakout above the 18s. I had been struggling, as you can see right here, to break above 18, and then finally the stock actually broke out on pretty good volume, as you can see right here on the chart. And the next day, the finally, after breaking out on volume, they come out with a downgrade. Like somebody downgraded the stock, stating that they were unsure about whether the spinoff of Old Navy was going to be a good idea, and they didn't think it was going to be beneficial for the company. And so, of course, you see the very next day the stock ends up trading down. So looking at the 5-minute, I think I spoke about this last week, that I was holding through that little bit of a squeeze, where you can see the stock shot up to about 1850s, came back down, and then subsequently after the downgrade, Peter Pan back down to 1720s. I ended up buying some long, and then of course purchasing some of the 1750 calls, as I also had calls here from 18. So I had both. Once it broke above 18s, I bought another 250 shares. I think my overall long was around 750 shares at an average price of 1702, and then I had, I think, 10 or 15 of the 18 calls. And then of course the stock gaps down, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait it out because I know it's just gonna retrace. Somebody had downgraded it, the market overreacts to it, and of course it based out down here. I ended up buying a couple of more shares and then going along the 1750s. And then the next day, I think it was just Friday, the stock, of course, traced back up to 80s. I ended up selling some of my calls here at 80, and then of course I ended up selling some of those 1750 calls at the end of the day. And of course, holding, I did buy more. I ended with I think 20 calls from 18 with an average price of 30. It was like 30.33, and then ended up selling those here at the top at 40 cents. So I ended up making money on that, and I'm selling the remainder of my 250 shares going into the weekend of GPS, and I sold that at 18 because I was like, I have a really good feeling that it's gonna have a little bit of an issue in 18, and of course it kind of double topped at like 18.15, and then subsequently sold off just slightly below the figure. So it was a good trade nonetheless. Made a couple $100, I think a little over $1,000 on that trade, between the options and of course the stock. Probably well over that. It must have been like 1,100 for that trade. But I have been holding the GPS for a little bit, but the options I bought, once the stock broke above 18, I was like, I'm thinking the stock is gonna go easily retrace back up to 19s. Another trade that I spoke about was in APA. So I shorted APA right at the very beginning of the day. Kind of very much mimics the Dow, as you can see at the beginning of the day. Looking at on the 5-minute chart, you can see right here, this is today's movement. This is today's movement on the market. You can see right here, very, very much mimicked the beginning of at least the market, when the market was rallying. And so I knew from from last week, that the stock has been holding below 3250s, as you can see by the chart here. I'm finally breaking below here at 70s, coming back up to about 60s, falling off, hitting 50s, coming down, hitting 50s, coming down. So I knew that coming into the market. I immediately went short, I purchased 30 of the 3250s. The stock was kind of inching above at 32.55, 58, and I was sitting there kind of stacking a little bit of the puts at 32.50s, and then ended up subsequently covering right here at 32, not knowing of course that the stock was going to dip a little bit lower, but it bounced here before, so I wanted to make sure that I got out. So that was a pretty good move at the end of the day. And then I subsequently went long, so I bought the 32 calls, and when the stock was literally just at the end of the day, when the stock was trading, you can see the low was around 85s on this candlestick, towards just like literally moments before the close. So I ended up going long. I have to wait and see how that works out. I'm thinking that stock is gonna kind of channel a little bit between 32s and like 32.60s. So even if I can eke out a couple of $100, it's worth it because the stock's really not making a lot of harsh movements back and forth. So I figured it might be a safe bet. I'll have to wait and see coming into tomorrow's open. I think even if the stock did come down to like down here, if it was to retest the previous lows, which was like 32.80s, I think I would still watch it and see if otherwise I would just like maybe purchase more and see if it swings back up above 32s. I have to wait and see. It did have good news. So APA, they ended up striking oil in a new area, so that's why the stock gapped up 6 points. And of course, there's a little bit of fluctuation as people are taking profits, unsure of what's going to happen, but there's still a little bit of money in that little bit of a churn where there's like where this kind of the stock is kind of swinging, back and forth between like 50 and 60 cents. I spoke about Bank of America, that Bank of America, in my opinion, was going to go down, and that I was going to be shorting it coming into the market, which I did. So towards the end of the day, as the stock was coming just above 32s, as I think that the stock is gonna, as you can see right here, where it came up to 32.15, sold off again, came up to 32.15, sold off, and of course subsequently sold off below 35s. Came up to about 34.60, and then we've retraced at the end of the day back above 35. So I subsequently went short. We'll have to wait and see. I went short with I purchased I think 25 of the 35 calls as the stock was trading closely. It was like 35.05, 35.06, and I was just putting in my orders at the end of the day. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not quite sure. Looking at the chart, you can see just based on the chart that $35 looks like the stock could easily test 34s. I'll have to wait and see if a break below, obviously a break below that 34.70, the market would retest, easily go into 50s and then 50s, of course, and retesting that $34 range. But I think Bank of America, unless it has some sort of good news or unless the market keeps going up, I think Bank of America will kind of sell off a little bit. The other thing that I did was, of course, reshorting more of Mattel. Mattel follows the NASDAQ. You can take a look at, if you look at the daily chart, you'll see from about September, as the NASDAQ started to inch its way higher, it looks like Mattel kind of double bounced off of the $9 and here, and of course, way back, which I talk about, perspective. You always want to pay attention to what stocks have previously done to capture some of the bigger movements. As you can see, again, it's the stock bouncing off here of around like $9-10, double bouncing here, of course, making a higher low, right? On the subsequent retest, it made a higher low than the previous low, and of course the stock has been tracing up. But you can see on the chart that just around that like 1460, 1470, the stock is looking fairly weak as it has kind of made its way down several times. And of course it does mimic the NASDAQ, as you can see from about September, that the NASDAQ has been kind of steadily moving higher. So I'm watching Mattel to see if we're gonna, I ended up buying, actually I said I've been long the 1450s. So I'm waiting to see. I think I got about 35 of the contracts of the 1450s. I was long over the weekend. The stock came all the way down. If you look at it here on the daily chart, the stock came all the way down to $14. But excuse me. And of course, I was well in the money. But in my opinion, this stock could easily go to $12. Which is why I'm kind of holding on to it. The contracts don't expire for the next couple of weeks, so I think if I can't get a break below 14s, I'll just end up taking the profits so that the contract don't expire, end up expiring out the money. But in any event, that's basically today's recap, and of course I'm still holding H&R Block. I've been holding H&R Block for some time here, finally waiting for the stock to break above 60s. It had been kind of meandering between like 30 and 60. Finally got a breakout. I'm long the 23 calls. And I'm, as you can see, the stock almost hitting 24s. And if you're looking at the stock on the daily, the stock can make its way back to, easily make its way back to, at the very least, $25. So we're looking at about $1.50 to $2 if we really push back up to those 26s, which is where more than likely I think the stock is going to retrace. I've got about another month and a half on these, so we'll wait and see how that works out. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and of course, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to subscribe and like the video so the video gets recommended to more people. Thanks for watching. Take care.